I opened the bedroom door, and my future fell off a cliff. His cologne was in the air, my mother's perfume was on the sheets, and the sound I heard wasn't a movie. It was a life ending in real time. For a second, my legs forgot how to stand, my throat forgot how to scream, and all I could say was the one sentence no daughter should ever have to say. In my house, in my bed. If it were you, what would you have done? Freeze, forgive, or make them pay? Don't stop, he whispered before he saw me. The sheet snapped up, the room went dead quiet, and the three of us just looked at each other like we were trapped inside a photo we never agreed to take. Simone Preston said, voice cracking, like a teenager who lost his way, I can explain. And my mother's hands clawed for fabric that wasn't hers while she kept saying, baby, it's not what it looks like, which is exactly what people say when it's exactly what it looks like. I didn't throw a lamp, I didn't break a mirror. I just took off the ring, felt that thin metal, cut a little line into my palm, and tossed it against his chest. It clinked on the floor like a tiny funeral bell. Here's your promise, I said. You can keep it. It fits you empty and light. The door slammed behind me. Thunder rolled like an amen. Houston's night was thick and wet and honest, and I drove with no music, no podcast, no prayer. I could believe in just the wipers scissoring and my heart beating too loud. I checked into a cheap hotel off 59 that smelled like lemon cleaner and old secrets. 43 missed calls by morning 11 texts from my mother, and one sentence in my mouth that tasted like steel. No more tears, no more begging. They'll remember this night for the rest of their lives. I didn't come from nothing. I came from Third Ward, where the choir shakes the paint off the church walls, where neighbors sit on porches and talk like the city can hear them, where my mother Yvonne braided my hair before sunrise and smelled like coffee, catfish, and hustle. I went to Texas Southern because home still needed me, worked nights at a call center, filed papers at an auto shop on weekends, studied until letters swam on the page, and promised myself that one day my name would mean something in rooms that didn't know it yet. The night I met Preston at a charity mixer downtown, he had that quiet money presence tailored suit, soft yes sir voice. But what got me wasn't the money. It was the way he listened, like I was a plan he wanted to build, not a story he wanted to wear. We were good, the kind of good that makes waiters smile, that walks through Buffalo Bayou Park, and talks about kids we might raise and a home we might buy, and a life we might stretch to fit both of our histories. He came to church with me in Third Ward, stood out in the pews, but held my hand like he belonged, ate fried chicken and collard greens, and said yes ma'am to women who used to pinch my cheeks when I was 7. And I went to wine things in River Oaks, where the furniture looks like it comes with its own insurance. I smiled at his parents while they evaluated my degree like it was a coupon, and I told myself love can bridge a bubble, if both sides walk. At first, my mother liked him a little too much. Or maybe I told myself that so I could sleep, because harmless jokes turned into a hand on his arm, a little too long. A fitted dress for Sunday dinner. A text on his phone that said, "Don't forget to eat a bottle of wine half empty when I wasn't home." One afternoon, I walked in and Mom was cooking in his t-shirt. "Spill on my blouse," she said. And the laugh in her mouth didn't reach her eyes, and I put that moment in a drawer inside my head labeled, "Probably nothing." You know what I mean. That's how we keep a life intact with drawers we never open. The signs got louder, phone locked for security protocols meetings that happened at restaurants that smell like lipstick. I don't wear business trips that sounded like my mother's church retreat, 2 cars in my driveway while I was out of town. 2 wine glasses in the sink when I got back. Another drawer, another label. Coincidence. But coincidence is just a word we use when we're not ready to admit we're collecting proof. Then came the night I opened that door, and I watched the person I loved and the person who raised me tie a knot with shame I didn't ask to wear. I walked away because staying would have turned me into something I didn't want to meet in the mirror. At the hotel, my best friend Camille knocked on my door before sunrise, jeans, hoodie eyes that knew the kind of friend who doesn't need the whole sentence to understand the whole story. "Don't make any big moves tonight," she said. "You're hurt, your smart plan before you act. Let them think you broke. That's when you keep the power." A sentence like a handrail. I held on. So I made a plan. Not revenge that burns everything, consequence that lights only what needs to be seen. First, I called the wedding planner and canceled everything with a voice that sounded like somebody older. "Bill it to the groom," I said, and the way she swallowed told me the word groom had never sounded so wrong. Second, I called a partner at Preston's fund, a man who always pretended not to notice me at galas, and always took my advice at youth center board meetings, and I said, "Preston had been distracted, maybe nothing. Maybe look into things quietly, because reputations can be expensive when you don't check the receipt." Third, I opened the home camera file Preston begged me to install after a package got stolen, and I downloaded what I already knew. Timestamps, angles, proof, a folder named Forever, because memory lies and video does not. For a few days I got strong in private gym runs that tasted like rust, hot showers that turned my skin pink, dark clothes that looked like armor without having to say so, hair pulled back, voice lower, slower still. I changed the way I moved through rooms, less apology, more spine. And when Camille looked at me and said, "You're glowing," I laughed, not happy. Powerful, there's a difference, and I had finally learned it in a language my body could speak. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. The date that was supposed to be my wedding showed up anyway. Flowers already cut, steaks already bought, a ballroom full of people already dressed for a promise. I walked in late wearing red, not the sweet kind, the stop sign kind, heels, clicking heads, turning a hush that ran across the floor like a wave, and Preston tried to smile like nothing had happened, because men like him believe they can still charm the air after they poison it. I took the microphone from the officiant and thanked everyone for loving us, and then I told the truth. Today isn't a ceremony, it's a confession. The lights dimmed, the screen behind me woke up, and the living room camera did the speaking. I shouldn't have to do a grainy picture that showed enough to end any doubt. Someone gasped, glass met marble too hard. Preston lunged for a cable and I said, "Leave it," without raising my voice, because when you're right, you don't have to shout. Twist time. You think that was the move. You think the video was the whole plan, but the flip wasn't just showing them. It was showing myself that I wasn't afraid of daylight. The real twist was smaller and sharper, a choice to take back the narrative before the narrative took me. In the quiet that followed the clip, when my mother's face had gone the color of paper, and Preston had realized the room was not his anymore, I said the one line I had written on a sticky note and carried in my purse for a week. "You broke me in private. I exposed you in public. That's balance." Then I set the mic down, not a drop, a deliberate place like a period at the end of a sentence I finally controlled, and I walked out without looking back, because sometimes dignity is a straight line to the door. By evening, the city had turned my pain into a headline. Clips looped on timelines. Opinion threads bloomed, and 6 different people sent me screenshots I didn't open. Preston's board huddled under efficient lighting and called it an internal matter, which is rich because matters get real external when donors start asking if the man you hired to be the face of your future knows where his face has been. Partners pulled out, clients paused, a foundation bearing his last name went under review, and Preston did what men do when their reflection finally tells the truth. He called, he texted, he waited downstairs, He wrote an email with the subject line "forever," which is a funny word to type when you couldn't make it through an engagement. If his fall was public, my mother's was local and cruel. In another way, the church group chat went silent. The brunch invites evaporated. Her stylist pushed her appointment until things settle, which is polite for, "Don't bring this to my chair." She left me voicemails that sounded like the kind of crying that used to make me fix everything, and for a while I held the phone and thought about answering, because habit is a religion, but I didn't, not out of hate, out of survival. Maybe that sounds cold, maybe it is. Do you think that's fair to refuse the person who once saved you, because now she's the person you need to be saved from? That's when I called my father, the man I hadn't spoken to much in years. Divorce does that to a life. It teaches you to live with amputations and call it fine. He flew in with a duffel and a soft old man swagger, cooked eggs like a poem, and told me a line that made me roll my eyes and then write it down anyway. Revenge gives relief, forgiveness gives freedom. At first I wanted relief, I wanted it like air, and then I started to want freedom more. Therapy helped. I won't pretend it didn't. I sat on a tan couch and answered questions that felt like they were picking locks. What did you lose that you actually needed? What did you lose that was killing you? When you say forgive, who are you trying to release, them or you? I hated those questions until they started shrinking the noise in my head, until nights stopped replaying like bad TV, until I could walk past a mirror and see my face without the headline behind it. I went back to the community center in 5th Ward where I used to volunteer with Preston, showed up alone, taught Saturday workshops for girls building businesses out of notebooks and hustle. And that's where I met Malik. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't a savior. He just showed up, listened, like he wasn't in a hurry, and said small, true things. You carry strength like it's part of your skin, and I laughed, because nobody had said anything to me in months that didn't have an angle. We walked by the bayou after an event. The lights on the water looked different now, less haunted, and he said, "Broken doesn't mean useless. It means redesigned," which is the kind of sentence that lands only when you're ready to hear it. I started living like a person again. Mornings that didn't taste like smoke music in the kitchen, windows open. Work that got my best, because I finally had some best to give. And one afternoon, I opened an old engagement photo and felt something I didn't know I had in me: compassion. Not for them, for me, the version of me who believed people would protect what they promised to protect. Yeah, that happened. And I'm still here. The hardest scene, the one I kept moving on my calendar like laundry day, was visiting my mother. It took almost a year. Her apartment was small, neat, smelled like lavender and regret. And when she opened the door, her eyes said the thing her mouth couldn't. "I didn't think you'd come." We sat on a couch that squeaked if you breathed too big, and for a long time we said nothing, because sometimes silence is the only responsible language when the wrong words can ruin what little is left. I told her I wasn't there to fix her, and I wasn't there to fight. I was there to let go. "I forgive you," I said, and her hands shook, "not because you earned it, because I want peace." She cried the cry of a woman who reached for love and grabbed a blade, told me she was lonely, told me she wanted to feel chosen, told me things that used to break me in half, and I listened without breaking, because I had finally learned the difference between understanding and returning to a fire. "Take care of yourself," I said. "I'm not your second chance." I drove home with the windows cracked. Houston smelled like rain and traffic and possibility, and on my balcony, Malik handed me a mug and didn't ask for the whole story, just, "How do you feel?" which is a better question anyway. "Lighter," I said, and I meant it. The window glass held a reflection I recognized. Not a bride, not an avenger in a red dress, just me, the girl who kept walking. Here's what I know now. Revenge is a door you walk through to get your breath back. Forgiveness is the road you choose when you're ready to travel without the weight. Both can be true. Both can be yours. Both can be right, depending on the day. But the part that still sticks in my chest, the part I want to ask you about, is the public part. Is it ever right to shame someone because they broke you in a room nobody else could see? Or is there always a better way behind a closed door? If it were you, would you have played the footage? Would you have walked away in silence? Would you have forgiven a parent who crossed that line? Or is that a line you don't come back from? Do you think that's fair? And what about the money? The social circles, the power that makes some people think rules are elastic. Is that the reason they do it? Because they think shame can be managed with a statement and a new suit? Or is it smaller and sadder? Two lonely people in the wrong story making a selfish choice because they didn't learn how to wait for a better one. I don't know the tidy answer, I only know the life I chose on the other side. If you're listening to this in a parking lot, with your hand on the wheel trying to decide whether to go home or drive to a hotel, if you're staring at a text that feels like a cliff and waiting for a reason not to jump, hear me. You are not weak for wanting consequences, and you are not cruel for wanting peace. You are allowed to choose both, and you are allowed to choose yourself, even if the person you're saving yourself from is the one who taught you how to survive. Keep your name. Keep your voice. Keep walking. Stick around with me one more beat, because I need you in this with me. Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done differently. Tell me if you think public receipts were too far or exactly far enough. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now so I can see this community stretch across the map like a safety net. Share this with the friend who needs proof that power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's a calm voice saying, "No more tears, no more begging, just me." Hit like if you believe karma comes around, and healing does too. Subscribe if you want more stories told the way they really feel, and if you've lived through something like this, I'm listening.